So, and he is rightly celebrated for his dynamic car reviews and captivating coverage of motoring events, and his content combines passion, insight and top-tier production quality, having watched a few. So if you really want to torment yourself, watch him at an £8 million supercar lineup, or driving a McLaren Artura Spider, or that Ferrari 348, which looks forward to test. All well within the speed limit of course. PetrolPed.
I don't need to say any more, that was great. Thank you very much. What an introduction, thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me at home okay?
No.
No? Can you hear me okay? No. Keep going, because you're here. So I've got no real plan of action for this evening. I just thought I'd free flow and have a chat about the two main things you're probably interested in, really. My journey through the Institute of Advanced Motorists, and also my YouTube life and how they kind of intermingle together. I'm super open to any questions. You can dive in a question at any time. But I thought I'd probably start off pre-YouTube with my love of driving, because I have been fascinated by cars since I was a little kid, probably inspired by my dad and my two older brothers, who also love driving, although actually I think my driving genes come from my mum, because my mum was, both my parents are a bit older than most of my friends at school. My dad was a hurricane pilot in the war, and my mum was the intake before the Queen in the army during the war. So she was driving ambulances and staff cars, and I found out, and she's sadly no longer with us, but there's two videos on YouTube with me and my mum, and I took her for a drive in my car and started to get her to talk about the war. I found out that she learned to ride a Moto Guzzi motorbike, and did all kinds of things she shouldn't have done with some Italian prisoners of war. But that's where my driving genes come from. The whole family says she was the best driver in the family. But I guess I started to learn to drive. I had a driving lesson on my 17th birthday. I passed my driving test 4 months later, first time, and I've loved driving ever since. In terms of advanced driving, I'm going to get something off my chest a little bit. I could have then passed my driving test at 17, carried on driving until I'm 70 years old with no test, no check to see I'm okay, no future training, and I still don't understand how that is okay. At 70, I think I have to reapply for my license, and 75, I need an eye test. Still no training, still no check, and I don't think that's right. I think driving is a privilege, not a right, and I think future training should be part of everybody's driving journey. But you guys all get off that page, because that's why you're here, right? So I went to university. The first time I ever heard about advanced driving, I was at university. To drive the student union minibus, you had to be assessed by a local driving instructor. And I did my assessment, and when he came back, he said, "Have you ever thought about doing advanced driving? Because you're quite good." And I didn't know about it then. I didn't know about the Institute of Advanced Motorists. I rang up a local driving school and asked if they did advanced driving lessons, and it was quite a lot of money. They charged per lesson, and I decided not to do anything about it. So that was 1993. Before 2007, late 2007, I bought a new car. I bought a Honda S2000, and I remember my insurance went, and I was mortified. It doubled overnight. I thought, oh my goodness me, what am I going to do? And that's the point. I thought, well, I'll look into Institute of Advanced Motorists. I got in touch with my local group, which was Southampton, and I did my advanced driving with them, and passed my test, and my insurance halved overnight, which was very nice. I don't know whether it still does that quite so much anymore. It for me, it was great. I went with the IAM's own insurance. Is it Surety? I don't even know whether they still do it. Over time, they kept creeping up, and it ended up being more and more expensive. So I did my advanced driving. I didn't do anything with it. My group that I was trained with was quite a busy group. I wanted to kind of do the observer thing. There was no room for observers. They weren't the most friendly bunch. So I kind of didn't do anything at all. I kept on renewing my subscription every year, but that was at that point anyway, I thought I've done my advanced driving. That's it. Then along comes YouTube. Now, I guess if you'd have told me when I started YouTube that I'd end up having YouTube as my job, I'd have not believed you at all. I've been very lucky. Every day I wake up and think, today I've got to make a video of me driving a car, and that's cool, and I'm very lucky. But back in the day when I started, it was just a hobby. I used to watch the guys on YouTube. I was a technical trainer in telecoms. I've done training for 20 plus years. I was a part owner of a telecoms training company, and I stand up and talk to people and can kind of communicate with people, and I love driving. At that point, I'd also done my race license as well. I forgot that bit. That's the other part. So I'd done my race license because I had a caterer and I wanted to do some sprints. So I did my ARDS test, which, if you've not done it, it's brilliant fun to do. They drive in a very different way. Okay, none of this brake gear separation thing. You know, you kind of heel and towing and all that kind of stuff. But I did my ARDS, so I thought, I've got my advanced driving, I've got my ARDS. I used to love watching people on YouTube making videos about cars. I used to watch them driving all these amazing cars and going to all these amazing places. I live 3 miles from Goodwood, so there's always stuff on my doorstep, and I thought, I'm going to try YouTube. I went and bought a 200 quid Sony Handycam. I had an old GoPro that I bought to film myself in my caterum, and I just went and made a video of my own car. And I just started making videos. I did one a week. Every Friday at 6 o'clock, I uploaded a video to YouTube. And I got a huge amount of mickey taking from my family, a lot, brutal. Because, you know, I've got lots of brothers and sisters, all with kids. So Uncle Pete doing YouTube was really funny. They're not laughing so much anymore, but back then it was brutal. And I just started making cars videos with my cars, with friends' cars. I started to get to know a few of the local car dealerships. One of them, Harwood's Group, they used to do a track day and customer day at Goodwood 4 times a year. So they'd bring cars to Goodwood and you could take them out on a 20-minute test drive. And I spoke nicely to them and they let me film a couple of those test drives. So that gave me some access to content, and I had my first viral video with that. So viral videos as a YouTuber is, you want that really badly. That's where you put a video up and for some unknown reason it just explodes and gets lots and lots of views. I drove a Range Rover Velar for 20 minutes. And I did the video and I put the video on the internet, and I didn't understand the word embargo then, but what the manufacturers do with new cars, when they have all their press activity, they'll get all the journalists together over maybe 3 or 4 weeks, film all the content, but you're not allowed to put your content out until the day the embargo lifts. So everybody puts their content out on the same day. I didn't know what an embargo was, and I, by complete fluke, put my video out the day the global embargo for Velar lifted. And at the time I had, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 subscribers, and my video did 100,000 views in 2 weeks, which was, it was like, oh, wow, you know, this is unbelievable. And then you just start kind of looking for reasons to make videos, looking to access cars. And one of the videos I did, this is now linking back to the IAM, is I thought I'd do a video about advanced driving, about doing my advanced driving test. And I literally went out in my car. I had a little mini roadster, which I've still got, and I did a video just talking about the process of doing advanced driving, the fact that it's actually more attainable than most people think. You just join your local group, it's all done with volunteers, so it's not as costly as most people think, and it's a really good thing for insurance and all that kind of stuff. I talked through the system, and I put the video out, and it did okay. And about 2 years later, I got an email from one of the senior guys in the IAM saying, we've seen your video on the internet, would you like to come to Thruxton to do one of the skills days? And I went along to Thruxton and met a whole bunch of the guys, and they then challenged me to do my masters. This is 2021 now, and I was like, well, yeah, sounds good. What's the masters? I didn't know. I'd never heard of it before. And I accepted the challenge to do my masters. And challenge is the right word. It was much more difficult than I thought, but really, really rewarding as well. How many have we got here? You say just who's got masters? Just a right. Why doesn't everybody else have it? So, I thought I'd talk to you about Master's journey, and then we'll jump back into the YouTube and talk about how I now do it for a living. So, I guess the first thing about Masters is it had been a while since I'd done my normal test. So, although I remembered bits of it, there was lots of stuff that I didn't remember. So, you end up reading the highway code again, and you end up sort of, looking at road markings in a completely different way. I still remember the mantra when I did my test for my normal advanced. At the end, the examiner, his favourite saying was, "The more white, the more shine," which has stuck in my head. That was his description for looking at road markings, painting on the road. It's quite a good mantra, actually, if you think about it. So, in terms of masters, first thing I got assigned my mentor, a lovely guy called Mark Andrews. Anybody know Mark? All I'd say is, any master's student, your mentor puts probably just as much effort into getting your masters as the student does. Mark supported me. We had a slight hiccup in the middle of the journey, but a huge amount of support, and I owe my passing to him. But he did, right on day one, say, "I'm only working with you if you get a distinction, and if you don't, I'm going to be really angry." And there was no pressure from that point on. Now, I had a choice of cars. I decided, the first car I decided to have a go in was my Mini Roadster, and that's a manual car. Unfortunately, it had been quite heavily modified by that point because I'm a YouTuber and that's what we do. So it was running like stage 2, 270 horsepower, Mini Challenge race brakes. So every time you put your foot on the brake, there was a horrible squealy noise. It was a terrible car to do your masters in. I did one session in that, and Mark's like, "I'm not doing it in this. It's embarrassing." So luckily, I then had another Mini, I had a Mini Clubman, and we decided to do it in the Mini Clubman. And I think we did maybe 3 or 4 sessions in the Mini Clubman, and I was just starting to get the hang of things. And then the Mini Clubman got written off, unfortunately. My wife was driving it, and a log fell off a trailer in front, went under the front of the car, and basically went up through the engine, smashed the gearbox, wrote the car off. Tracy was okay, car not so much. So then I'm like, this isn't good. Now I get lots of press cars and lots of long-termers, and this is the bit that I found really interesting. My response to Mark was, "That's not a problem, I've got loads of cars, we'll just do it in those." And the answer was, no, you do it in one car. You have to learn that car so much, in terms of you need to know exactly, it's an automatic, so if you're not in manual override, when's it going to change gear? You need to know so much about the car. You can't hop from one car to another. It's just not possible. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll have to wait for me to get another car. So I eventually replaced the Mini with a Porsche Boxster, and we decided to do it in the Porsche Boxster, which was good because Mark had a Porsche Cayman, so he already kind of knew. I mean, he's a bit of a nerd, so as soon as we got in, he said, "Right, okay, this car automatically will change from first to second at 27 miles an hour. It will change from third," and it just knew straight away. And we did the rest of it in the Porsche. 2-hour sessions, typically 1.5 to 2 hours. Commentary drive, I found, well, it's not called commentary drive, it's called spoken thoughts. Look that name up. Anyway, commentary drive. That was difficult to start with, but I think once I got my head around it, it was okay. I still use that quite a lot now. If ever I'm driving and I'm tired, if it's been a long day and you feel it doing the whole nodding dog, I just start commentary drive straight away and it wakes me up straight away, and then find a garage and pull over and grab a coffee. So we did all of our sessions. Every session he gave me this complete breakdown of what I'd done right, what I'd done wrong. We videoed a few, so there are a couple of videos on my channel of me doing spoken thoughts and driving with Mark. But I was really struggling. I still even when we got my test date, I wasn't driving, I wasn't, if you like, making progress enough. I was being too cautious. And the thing that made it click for me is I went out with Mark driving and me in the passenger seat and he drove. And I'm like, oh, that's making progress. Obviously not speeding, but just far, far more positive about everything. And that really changed my approach. And then we did the test. I'm very proud to say I passed with a distinction. And I got my sticker in the car. And the guys I do my podcast with take the mick very badly about my advanced driving because I've got stickers in the car saying I'm an advanced driver. But it was a really, really valuable thing to do. Do I drive like that all the time? My problem is you'll see how I drive all the time because I put it on the internet. So I put a video up and I knew it would happen. About half an hour later my phone would go and it would be Mark. That wasn't the system, was it? That's not how I told you to drive. What are you doing changing down through the gear? And I'm like, Mark, you know, cut me some slack. But, so that's Masters. It is something that I'm very proud of, and it was tricky. The last thing to say is the choice of car. It was very nice doing it in a Porsche, but the biggest challenge with that car is it's so sensitive. Driving smoothly is really hard. So every application of the brake, every application of the throttle, every input to the steering, you have to just do it so smoothly to keep the car smooth. And I think I'm a really smooth driver, and it still grates me. I only got one negative mark on my test, and guess what? It was for smoothness, and it really wound me up. It's like, oh God, please mark me down for something else. But that was the only thing I got marked down for. Was he said, well, you weren't very smooth a couple of times. I'm like, really?
Challenge there, so would you try and do better?
Well, yeah, but you can't because you know they can.
In that car?
Well, yeah, maybe. I think the guys that I work with on that project, they're all just such competent, big, massive CV of amazing driving. But yes, anyway, back to YouTube. The question I get asked probably most often is, it's normally followed by, when someone says, oh, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm a YouTuber. The very next thing people say almost every time is, you can do that, can you? Or how does that work? Or how do you make money from YouTube? Or how can that be your job? As I said, it was not a plan for me to be a YouTuber. I just started making videos about cars, and the more successful those videos become, the more doors open up to get access to other cars. Every now and again you'll get a viral video, which helps a lot. The best viral video I've had has had 2.5 million views, just one video, and that was a classic Fiat 500 with a 1300cc Hayabusa bike engine in it and a 6-speed sequential gearbox. Unbelievable thing. Terrifying, no roll cage or anything, none of this roll cage rubbish. It was terrifying but amazing to drive. So you start doing that, and the revenue model for a YouTuber is based on primarily ad revenue from, if you watch a video on YouTube, unless you bought YouTube Prime, which is the kind of paid for subscription service, you'll see adverts. And there's an ad sharing or ad revenue sharing model between Google, who own YouTube, and the content creator. So the more views that I get from a video, the more income I get from that video. And then over time you'll start to work with partners and so on. And about 3 or 4 years in, I've been doing YouTube 9.5 years now. 3 or 4 years in, I was doing my training job. I was filming YouTube videos at the weekend. My training job, I went from standing up and doing lots of training in front of real people to doing lots of online training in front of a computer and developing lots of e-learning and so on. Because that's the trend we could start. This is way before COVID. We could start to see the whole home working, distance learning trend coming into learning. And I just didn't enjoy it. I don't enjoy sitting, writing, learning. And apparently, according to my wife, I think her technical phrase used was, "I was becoming a miserable git." I didn't see it, but I wasn't happy at all. But I loved doing my PetrolPed videos. So she said, "Well, why don't you just give it a go?" So instead of just literally stopping work and doing YouTube, I left work and became a contract trainer. So I worked as a contractor or a freelancer, effectively, delivering other people's training, and then stepped up how much YouTube I did. And I'd maybe do 1 or 2 weeks training a month, and then the rest of the time I could make YouTube videos. Because the other thing I wasn't able to do when I was full-time was I was getting invited to lots of activities and press trips and events, and I ran out of holiday. I didn't have enough holiday to go and do them, so I was having to turn things down that were quite cool. So as a freelancer, that gave me the freedom to kind of play with things. And all I've done is slowly bleed off the training and ramp up the YouTube side of things. To the point where it'll be nearly 3 years now. I haven't done a training course in 3 years. I'm now full-time at YouTube, which is a crazy thing, really. But as I said, very, very fortunate. I'm not quite at the heights of some of the really big channels that earn money that would make your eyes water. Anybody watch Matt Armstrong? Does anybody know Matt Armstrong? The youngsters?
Watch me.
Matt Armstrong, so Shmee's a really good mate of mine. Matt Armstrong, he basically rebuilds crash damaged supercars.
Oh, yes.
Brilliant videos. Okay. So conservatively, ad revenue, I reckon he's probably taking home maybe £400,000 a month. In ad revenue. I'm not like that. My wife wishes I was, and so do I, but sadly not. But yeah, huge amounts of potential anyway. The really big channels, just the money they make, the likes of Mr. Beast and all that kind of stuff. But for us, as in my space at my size, you can kind of make a comfortable living and get to do what you love and drive the cars of your dreams.
He's got about, Matt Armstrong, he's got about 15 supercars.
Oh, yeah.
Last one he did was he bought a Rolls Royce Cullinan
Off of
Copart.
Rushmore.
No, it was his, but
Yeah.
it was a Copart.
Yeah.
He paid £160,000 for it, and it had done 329 miles
Yeah.
from new.
Yeah.
He rebuilt it and then drove it to Switzerland.
Yeah. I mean, he makes amazing videos. He's like, in the car space, he is the best there is in the car space. He doesn't do reviews like me. So I mainly do car reviews, car events. So a car review might be a new car to market. So that's either, if they're really new, I did the new Nissan Micra about a month ago. That was in a studio. It doesn't come out for another couple of months. So it's a static car, and you kind of walk around and talk about what the car's going to be. It might be a first drive video, so I went up to Scotland about 3 or 4 weeks ago and drove the new Kia EV6 GT, which is unbelievably good. That video's under embargo, that comes out next week. Or it might be events. I was with Dacia on Friday in Barcelona in their Dakar car with a guy called Nasser Alatayeb, who's won Dakar 5 times, and he took me for a hot lap. He's got this amazing house in Spain with a 400-hectare garden. He's built his own Dakar course around his garden, right through the woods and stuff. So we were driving around that in a Dakar car, which was unbelievable. So it's all kinds of crazy things.
Did you get to do because Defender Opta is all over at the
Well,
moment.
so that's sore point. So in terms of manufacturers I work with, it's probably easier to say the ones I don't have a relationship with than the ones I do, and Land Rover is one of them that I don't have a relationship with, which is really annoying because Land Rover content does really, really well for me, and for some reason I just cannot get into their press team at all. But Defender,
I asked the question because the last time I looked it was about 7 or 8 video worldwide.
yeah,
of that
it's an amazing vehicle. I've spoken to people who've driven it, and to say it's basically a very high power V8 Defender that just looks amazing. Yeah, that's the there aren't many manufacturers that I'd love to get in that I don't currently. Land Rover's one of them. Aston Martin's the other, but I think I'm there now. I had a meeting last week. But BMW, Porsche, I don't like Mercedes, sorry, Mercedes owners, but they don't talk to me, but I don't care because I don't like their cars anyway. Porsche, Kia, Hyundai, all of the Stellantis group, but I don't like most of their cars either. But kind of you have to be journalistic, integrity and all that kind of stuff. You have to sort of view each car on its own merits.
Chinese cars?
Right. The really annoying thing is that there are some of the Chinese cars I've driven are really very good. My challenge at the moment is there's so many manufacturers that I've never heard of before. They're coming to market. The big challenge that we're finding in our space is they're buying their way into influence. What I mean by that is they'll be paying for content creators like me to go to events. Whereas normally on a press trip, I don't get paid to go. I get invited, I get all my expenses paid, but my income, if you like, is from the ad revenue on the video. I don't. So that means because the brand's not paying me, I can say what I like. If the car's great, I'll say it's great. If it's rubbish, I'll say it's rubbish. I don't have any kind of problem with that. If a brand's paying me to be there, I instantly feel like that person doesn't have integrity or doesn't have the freedom to say what they want. Chinese brands that are very good, MG, I've done a number of their cars, very good. BYD, very, very good. BYD seals brilliant cars, like 45 grand. They're all electric, unfortunately. I don't know what your view on electric cars is. Maybe we'll come to that as well. Oh yes, sorry, yeah, I didn't spot that. I thought that was Texas Cowboys hat. I didn't realise it was Tesla. EV versus petrol is, here's the thing. So my channel is called PetrolPed. Now, the reason behind that, my name's Peter, but I've been called Pedro since I was about 4. My 2 elder brothers, massive motorsport geeks. Their hero was a guy called Pedro Rodriguez. And when I came along, I was baby Pedro. And I've been called Pedro ever since. When I went to university, that got shortened to Ped. So everyone called me Pedro or Ped. So when I started YouTube, I'm going to call my channel. I've got to come up with this cool thing. I should have just said Peter Green Drives or something. I thought Petrol. I was driving somewhere for work, and I'm kind of formulating this plan about becoming a YouTuber before I told my wife that I was going to become a YouTuber. And I thought, PetrolPed, I'm a PetrolPed. PetrolPed? PetrolPed? That's it. That's the one. I'm going for it. Brilliant. The big problem with that is that's 10 years ago. EVs weren't a massive thing. And the EVs 10 years ago were things like that. What's that horrible plastic thing that came out? The G-Wiz or a Nissan Leaf or something like that. They weren't really very good back then. And electric cars now are really, really good. So I probably should have changed my name of my channel to something else. Because when I review an electric car, some smart ass in the comments section is going to say, oh, we all call PetrolPed, and this is an electric car, no wonder you don't like it. But I think there is a real challenge for us, is that I just love cars. I don't really care how it's powered down the road. I love petrol cars, I love diesel cars. I've driven some great hybrids, I've driven some great electric cars, I've driven a couple of great hydrogen fuel cell cars. I just like cars. But there are these two tribal groups on the internet, the kind of petrol head EV's the devil, and on the other side it's the kind of charge head, petrol's the devil, and never the twain shall meet, and they hate each other, and yeah, I don't really get it. I think the interesting thing about electric coming to this is driving an electric car is very different to driving an automatic petrol car or a manual petrol car. Completely different set of skills, whether that's on road or on track. Unless you drive an Ioniq 5N, then you've got gears in it, which I don't know. I've driven an Ioniq 5N. They are. Any questions? Go on.
Most difficult car.
Most of the new cars are quite easy to drive, even the really, really powerful ones. even the supercars with hundreds of horsepower. I think the difficult ones are the older ones. I drove a beautiful, it wasn't a very big YouTube channel, but I think I had about 8,000 or 9,000 subscribers. I was at Festival of Speed, and I'd had my first press car from what was then FCA, Fiat Chrysler. So that's Fiat Abarth G. And they'd given me an Abarth 124 Spider about 2 weeks before Festival of Speed. And I met up with the press team at Festival of Speed to say thank you and just have a cup of tea and have a chat. And while we were chatting, I just happened to mention the race as the conversation went. Thought nothing of it really. Left the meeting, went out into the park, and about half an hour later my phone rang and they went, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in the middle of the park." "Right, make your way to the assembly area, and on your way go to the drivers club and sign in at the drivers club, because we've got a guy who was meant to drive a car for us up the hill, has turned up without his license, and we need you to drive a car for us up the hill." Now, as a Goodwood fan, this is unbelievable. Okay, so I turn up to the assembly area, and there is a car straight from the Alpha Museum, called a 1900 Sport Spider, the only one in the world. The guy said, "Look, it's priceless because it's the only one in the world, but at a guesstimate, £5 to £6 million. And we'd like you to drive it up the hill at Goodwood in front of 60,000 people." Okay, fine. This is all right, and I'm shaking. I've got my Alfa Romeo race suit on, and I'm there, and I'm thinking, what on earth? And I'm looking around, and I had in front of me was Nick Mason's 250 GTO being driven by Nick Mason. Now that car's currently worth about £55 million.
Like 250
250 GTO. He bought that car for 40 grand, by the way. And the car behind was being driven by Martin Brundle. And the car
What year
behind
was
that
that?
was being driven by Jochen Mass.
What year was that?
This would be 2018, 19.
Oh, Marshall.
Probably.
In the assembly area that year.
There you go. So
Just said no.
get out. So I went up. They were
I was Marshall.
so all the there's Martin Brundle, and they're all having a conversation. And so I went up and said, "Excuse me, gentlemen, I've never driven up the hill before. Any words of advice?" And Martin Brundle went, "You driving that? Driven it before?" He said, "I'd bring it back looking like that. If I were you." he said, "Shiny side up." He said, "Don't be a hero, because if you try and be a hero and it fails, no one will ever forget you. But if you just drive it up, no one will ever remember you. You know, just bring it shiny side up." And I drove it, and it was a beautiful car, but I think where it was and so on, that was quite special. The same context, the most difficult car I drove what year are we now? 2022 up the hill, and that was a Jeff Gordon NASCAR. So a friend of mine bought the car, and I was doing some filming with a mutual friend, and he said, "Oh, Paul's bought a NASCAR. He's driving it up the hill at Goodwood. You should ask him. He'll let you drive it." And I said, "Look, he's not going to let me drive a 900 horsepower NASCAR up the hill at Goodwood." He went, "Oh, hold on." He went away, came back. He said, "No, I've just spoke to him on the phone. You're good. You're all golden. You can drive it." I was like, "Well, I'm certainly not going to drive it for the first time in front of all the people at Goodwood." So he went to Millbrook and shook the car down. But that was really hard. Because for a start, I'm 6'3", Jeff Gordon's 5'10". NASCARs have welded doors, so there's no door. You have to climb in through the window, which, when you've got legs my length, was emotional at best. I actually pulled a muscle in my shoulder getting out of it because I couldn't get out of it. It was on really old slicks that were out of date. They were like ice hockey pucks. They had no grip on them at all. 900 horsepower. That was proper sketch.
And you have to do wheelies.
I did a burnout off the line. I was quite proud of myself for that, to be fair.
You didn't do a donut outside.
No, that's definitely where you do a Chris Hoy and end up smashing yourself in the head. But driving up the hill, that's, for me as a Goodwood fan, I get to do it every year now, and that's very special.
If
if you had to swap one of the cars in your garage, and I'll tell people what you've got in the garage, you've got the Mini, the 911 and
Yeah,
the SUV there.
yeah, the Macan. Yeah.
What would you change that for what?
Well,
What price on that?
I'll tell you between. Tune in on Monday about the 911 because I don't have the 911 anymore.
Okay.
No, it blew up and it's gone back.
Okay.
That's sad. I'd change the 911 and buy a more expensive one. I think as a driver, I love driver's cars, so I love the whole process of driving. So whenever I get to drive a really good driver's car, that's what floats my boat. And they don't have to be expensive. I don't know if anyone's ever driven a Hyundai Ioniq, an i20N. Their little 200 horsepower hot hatch. Amazing car. Manual gearbox, limited slip diff, a couple of hundred horsepower, so not too much power. Amazing things. But in terms of pure driver's car, the new 911 ST is magnificent. Absolutely. It's got a really short throw 6-speed manual. It's got a very lightweight clutch and a lightweight single mass flywheel, so it's quite tricky to drive. It's tricky to get off the line because you can burn the clutch out very easily. But once you're on your way, that's amazing. Up there with the best.
You build these relationships with these different manufacturers.
Yes.
What happens if they deliver up a car to you that you don't like and isn't very good?
Yes.
What does that do to the relationship, or can you afford to be totally honest with them?
Can I just jump in on that?
Sorry?
Can I just jump in on the
Yeah.
follow-ups? If you see your peers giving good reviews of cars and you hate it,
Yeah.
would you be brave enough to say no to the manufacturer
Yeah.
and also stand and say, I think that's a part of it?
Because they
I'll
might turn around and say, I'm sorry, you're not having any more.
Most press teams I know, and I talk to them a lot about this very subject because it's quite important. I love McLaren, okay, and I've always loved McLaren, and I've had an on-off relationship with McLaren. I've always struggled to get press cars from them, but I had one literally 2 weeks ago. When I dropped it back, I had a really long chat with the press officer in McLaren, and she basically said, we're not interested in yes people. We're going to give cars to people, and we want your honest opinion. And if your honest opinion is the car is great, fantastic. If you don't like something about it, if that's your honest opinion, then that's fine. As long as that is truthful and you're saying something that is fact, that's fine. If you make stuff up or allow, then that's a completely different thing. In terms of the first part of your question, it doesn't happen very often. In fact, it's only happened once to me. And I'll even tell you the car. It was a Toyota BZ4X, which is their all-electric car. Okay. And I got that car delivered to me in the winter. It was really cold, it was about -5, and the electric range went down 90 miles when you turn the heating on. Okay. And it only had 190 odd miles anyway. It wasn't good. And I wasn't really very impressed with it. I'd not actually filmed anything, but I was starting to think, well, what am I going to do? Because this car really is not very good. I don't think it looks that great, and it's just not, it's not dealing with the cold temperatures at all. And I was staying at a friend's house and teaching in Cheltenham, because it was when I was doing both of my jobs. And it was really cold in the morning, and unfortunately with press cars, lots of cars will have an app now that you can warm the car up from inside the house, and you can do all kinds of things. Your Tesla, you can make with farm and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want a car with a fart machine on it? I mean, come on, that's great. So, but as a press car, we generally don't get those apps, and I needed to warm the car up. So I went out, and I started the car and turned the heating on to warm it up because it was like -5. And I came back in and had a cup of tea, and when I went back out again, the car wouldn't start, and it wouldn't go in gear, and it wouldn't disengage the handbrake. Because what I'd not realised is I hadn't turned the car on so that the high voltage battery was on. I'd done everything from the low voltage 12-volt battery and basically flattened the 12-volt battery, and the car wouldn't start. And I've now got to get to an hour's drive to get to work, not happy bunny. So I rang up Toyota, and I basically said, this is not great. They sent someone out to recover the car, and they asked me, they said, what's the difference in range when you turn the heating on? And I said, it's not great, to be honest. And they went, yeah, we've got a bit of a problem with that. And I said, yeah, you have. And they said, we know we have. It's an early car, it only just come out. We need to fix the software. And I said, look, I'll tell you what, take the car back. I won't say anything about this online. I won't do a review. And when it's fixed and it's ready, I'll have another one and I'll do a review. But I'm not, because all I'm going to say at the moment is it's not good enough. And it really wants me. So that I would always, if it's that bad, or if there's a fundamental issue with a car, that there's the kind of clickbait ad revenue model that lots of YouTubers would go down would be, I'll make some sensationalist video about this and I'll earn a load of money on ad revenue and it'll be great, I'll have a viral video. My problem with that model is it only works a couple of times and then you start to annoy the people who are your lifeblood and give you cars. If I had a problem with a car, I'd just ring up the press team and say, the car's not great. For these reasons, I'd rather not make a video. That's it.
It must be quite difficult in the context of what you were saying about Mercedes-Benz, not to let the unconscious bias kick in, and you don't like it before you've even opened the door.
No, I mean, I've driven a few Mercs, but I'm just not a fan of their styling, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on the channel by not having them on there. And they don't work with many creators anyway. There's very few. I've got a good friend of mine who does lots and lots of stuff, and they'll work with those, and that's fine. I don't need to work with everybody. There are certain ones I've always wanted to work for that bizarrely commercially probably don't do very well. Supercars never really do very well, but we just want to drive a supercar. You know, if McLaren are going to give me a supercar for a month or for a week, then of course I'm going to do that. I'm going to Le Mans on Thursday with Ferrari, in a Ferrari. That video will do absolutely pants on the channel. I really care. Going to Le Mans in a Ferrari with the Ferrari. So it's the experiential stuff sometimes that is just as important as the financial stuff.
Sorry, I missed the first bit. But why don't you do anything negative on that? Why don't you actually say that you don't particularly like
Oh, no, I do.
Oh, you do?
Oh, absolutely. But if it's something that's just that bad, that's you know. I mean, the best example I can use negative wise is I worked for 3 years with the Hendy Group. I was a brand ambassador for the Hendy Group, and as part of that, I got basically a long-term car from them, and we cycled through all the different brands within the Hendy Group. And one of the brands I worked with was Lotus. So I got a Lotus Emira as a long term, and I ran the V6 manual Lotus Emira for a month as my daily. Amazing car. And I was meant to have it for a bit longer, but I got a phone call from Lotus saying, oh, from Hendy Lotus saying, Pete, we kind of need the car back because we've sold it. But don't worry, we've got the new 4-cylinder AMG powered Emira. We'll just swap you out and put you in that. So I mean, it's a tough day in the office that way. You have to take one Lotus back and get another one. And I got the AMG powered one, but that has a semi-automatic flat paddle gearbox, and it is utterly dire, like really bad. You time the shifts on a caliper, it's really bad. And I drove the car, and I'd already driven it at Goodwood, and I knew someone in Lotus, and they said there's a problem with the software. Basically, there's an ECU that controls the engine, there's a different ECU that controls the gearbox, and the communication between the two is a real problem for them. They can't basically get it fast enough. But it was really bad, and the engine was characterless, and I just didn't like the car at all, and I absolutely slated it because it was terrible, and it was £92,000 car, and it should have been amazing, and it really wasn't. I don't know what Lotus think about that, to be honest, but Hendy were fine, because I said to Hendy, look, I'll tell you now, I've just slated the auto gearbox, and I've had people come up since from Lotus and from Hendy, and they know about it, and I wasn't lying. My response was, or the conclusion at the end of the video, I said, I cannot understand how a professional development driver at Hethel drove that car and said, yeah, that's good, we can send that out to customers, because it was terrible. So I don't have to say that very often, but if you just, as long as you're not sensationalist and
So they actually
you're not
like it.
doing it for effect, it's super important. Otherwise, I've got no credibility.
The history of design of cars is littered with instances where you look at something and you think, manager looked at that and said, that's great.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I looked at
Nissan
was
Juke.
it some BMW, or was it Guy
Sorry, that was half. No one's got a Nissan Juke, but
My dad has.
that came out by accident.
I was in a Guy Salmon in the foyer I can't remember how long ago it was now, and they got one of these new electric BMWs with this great big grille at the front,
Yeah.
this plastic thing which looks, it's like a plastic tray stuck on the front.
It is.
And I looked at it and I thought, I wonder which manager signed off the design of that and thought, yeah, that looks great.
I tell you
because
what.
it looks crap.
It does, unless you're Chinese. The Chinese market, the thing that they rank really highly in cars on is very desirable in cars is a big grille for the front. So this it's not a grille anymore, but this, and actually if you look when the M3, M4 came out, the big grills on the front and BMW got slated for it. If you look historically back at early BMWs, they had exactly the same style, they just weren't as big. But the whole big grille, big front thing is basically aimed at the Chinese market, which is so important to so many of the manufacturers. So sometimes those things, it's not a market specific thing, it will be a global thing. Yeah, they've got, I mean, you do look at some design.
If you had to pick your favourite Top Gear special episode, what would it be?
Oh, the one where they drove to the Arctic.
The Arctic.
Yeah, in the Arctic trucks. I love that one. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan. Because that was back in the days when Top Gear challenges were actually okay. The one where they raced the truffle back was quite good as well. I've got two good stories of that. So I did some TV, and I got into that. I did a series called Vintage Voltage. I don't know if anyone saw Vintage. Yes. Used to electrify classic cars, and I got into that. The production company saw me on YouTube and invited me to do Vintage Voltage. But two very briefly before I come to that one, I did my screen test, and the production company said yes. The channel, which was Discovery, said yes, and said you just need to get on with the guy who runs the garage in Wales that does the cars, and if you get on okay, then the job's yours. So I drive to Wales and I walk in the office and we took one look at each other, and we were on the same course at university 30 years. Right, Moggy, right, Ben, and they were like, sorry, do you know each other? We're like, we used to do it together really well. But the guys that worked on that were all ex-Top Gear. And my favourite Top Gear story, I don't know if you remember the Top Gear episode where Jeremy Clarkson drove the new Land Rover Discovery 3 up to the top of the mountain in Wales. Remember that one?
And he took the key.
That was
the ketone.
he took the ketone.
Yes.
So because what they used to do, they do the bits with the talent with Jeremy and the boys, and then all the fill-in stuff would be done by other people in the following couple of days, the drive-bys and all that kind of stuff. So Jeremy did his bit, left, got on a plane, went home with the key in his pocket, and the car's still at the top of the mountain. It got a bit silly then. I like the old time with the reviews. I'm a bit old school, I guess, like that. One of the coolest things about the journey I've been on is I used to watch the likes of Tiffany Dell on Fifth Gear. Tiffany Dell is a really good mate of mine now. I've filmed with him a number of times. We were both brand ambassadors for Hendy, and I got to know Tiff really well. I've done a couple of events with him. He is the most indiscreet person I've ever met, by the way, especially when he's had a couple of glasses of wine. But what a guy, what a driver. A super lovely guy. And Vicky Butler Henderson, I was with literally on Friday. So that's quite cool when you get to meet those. I've not met Jeremy or anything.
Tiff was supposed to drive, it was an Aston Martin, what was it, the Valkyrie or something like that. And they just brought this out, and the owner was at Goodwood.
Yeah.
Was going to go up the hill in the morning.
Yeah.
He was going to drive her
Yeah.
up the hill. Time to go. No sign of Tiff. He just disappeared. and she lost her run.
Oh dear. Oops. I can't drive a Valkyrie. I tried, but I'm too big. My
Yeah.
feet too big. My legs are too long. Unfortunately. Never mind.
What was it, £3 million car or something?
About £2.5 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. And she had to leave. She had to leave Goodwood at 12 o'clock, so that they couldn't even put it onto the afternoon run. So she was not happy.
I can imagine.
With a number of supercars you see wrapped around lampposts, do you think there should be some kind of special test before these rich young footballers?
Oh mate,
something are allowed out?
it's unbelievable that you can. And actually, it's not supercars. What kind of Tesla have you got, by the way?
3 long range car.
3 long range. Oh crap! I'm losing that. It's very good. It's not a supercar. It's any Tesla. Even the kind of base Tesla, they're ridiculously quick. So you know, I worry that the mid to high performance EVs, they're the ones that you kind of probably don't even think about being quick, but they'll all do 0 to 60 in under 4
I
seconds.
drove a Chrysler Bolt in Florida. It must have been about 9 years ago, and we did this Porsche off the line.
Oh mate,
No problem at all.
the fastest car I've driven to 60 is an electric car.
Scary.
What was yours doing?
Sorry?
0 to 60, 3.8 seconds.
It's under 4 seconds.
I drove the
You
Lotus
didn't get
Electric, got
3.2 seconds.
905
No.
horsepower.
I thought of buying
And it's
one, but
900
that's
horsepower.
2.8.
But do you think there is a responsibility on the car manufacturer
To
before
be
they let
fair,
somebody roll off?
to be fair, quite a lot of them do. So Porsche's a really good example. You buy a Porsche and you get invited to the Porsche Experience Centre in Silverstone,
Silverstone, yeah.
and you get to experience what the car can do. I was saying before, anybody can go to Porsche and do that. It's a brilliant experience. If you want really good driving experiences that aren't silly money, Porsche Experience Centre in Silverstone, absolutely worth it. You can do a half day or a full day, and it's not billions of pounds. It's way cheaper than something